You think you understand gravity? You're wrong. Not in some small, technical sense, not merely lacking precision in the particulars, but fundamentally, catastrophically wrong about what you think you know. You believe gravity is among the most comprehensible forces in nature. After all, does not every child learn of the falling apple? Does not every student inscribe the formula upon their examinations and consider the matter settled? Here is the truth that will unsettle you. You have confused calculating gravity with comprehending it. These are entirely different operations of the mind, and you have been trained, carefully, systematically trained, not to notice the difference. Drop a stone, watch it fall, observe the acceleration, the arc, the impact. You can describe this motion with perfect mathematical precision. You can predict where the stone will land before you release it. You can calculate the time of its descent to fractions of a second. Now answer this. How does the earth make the stone fall? Not what it does. You know what it does. The stone accelerates earthward at a constant rate, the same rate for all bodies regardless of their weight. How does the earth accomplish this? Through what mechanism? By what means does the earth, separated from the stone by empty air and then by nothing at all, reach across that distance and compel the stone to move? Look carefully. Between the stone and the earth lies nothing. No string connects them, no chain, no invisible thread, no medium of any kind through which force might travel. The earth simply pulls across emptiness, through void. How? You cannot answer, and here is what will disturb you more. Neither can anyone else. Neither could the very man who gave you the formula you believe constitutes understanding. The inverse square law tells you what gravity does with breathtaking precision. Every particle of matter attracts every other particle with a force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. From this law, you can predict the motions of planets for centuries. You can calculate the path of comets. You can chart the tides. But the law tells you nothing whatsoever about how gravity works. It is manifest that description and explanation are different things. A map of a territory is not the territory itself. A formula that predicts behavior does not reveal mechanism. You have possessed the map. You have mistaken it for the land. Consider how a prism separates white light into its constituent colours. Before careful examination, men believed colours were modifications produced by the prism itself, that the glass somehow created the rainbow. Proper investigation revealed the opposite. White light is not simple but compound, a mixture of rays that the prism merely separates. What appeared elementary concealed hidden complexity. So too with your understanding of gravity. What appears simple and comprehended is in truth compound and mysterious. The formula works, the mechanism hides. The error most make is assuming that familiar phenomena are understood phenomena. Familiarity breeds false comprehension. You have witnessed falling bodies since the moment your eyes first opened. Therefore, you believe you understand falling. But witnessing is not understanding. Predicting is not explaining. The habit of taking the commonplace for granted is the enemy of genuine inquiry. Imagine a merchant who believes he understands commerce because he can calculate profit and loss. He tallies his accounts with perfect precision. He knows that buying for 3 shillings and selling for 5 yields a profit of 2. But ask him why this particular good commands this particular price, why demand rises and falls as it does, why certain markets flourish whilst others wither, and he is struck dumb. He calculated. He did not comprehend. This is your relationship to gravity. You feel your weight pressing against the chair beneath you. You experience gravity's effect. But ask, what connects you to the earth? Look down. There is floor, then foundation, then earth, and between every particle of your body and every particle below, nothing but void traversed by inexplicable influence. The same when you watch rain fall. The same when you see a leaf descend. The same when you observe the arc of a thrown ball. Every falling body enacts the scandal you have never noticed. Let us make this vivid. Suppose you were asked to move a stone without touching it, without throwing anything at it, without disturbing the air around it, without any connection whatsoever, simply to reach across the intervening space and compel that stone to move toward you. You would declare this magic, not mechanics. You would say it violates every principle of rational causation. Effect cannot occur without connected cause. Bodies cannot act where they are not present. To move something, you must touch it, or touch something that touches it, or establish some continuous chain of contact. And yet, this is precisely what every massive body does to every other massive body. Continuously, everywhere, always. The sun, residing some 93 million miles distant from this earth, reaches across that incomprehensible expanse of nothingness and pulls upon you, not through any rope, not through any chain, not through any medium whatsoever, simply pulls through nothing. This is what the formula describes. This is what successful prediction requires you to accept. And this is what no one has ever explained. Your education gave you the formula and carefully trained you not to notice what the formula demands. It concealed the scandal in plain sight. You learned to calculate. You were never taught to question whether calculation constitutes comprehension. The formula you memorized is not a solution. It is a precise statement of a problem so fundamental, so disturbing, that the greatest natural philosopher who ever confronted it declared it rationally unacceptable. And that raises an urgent question. If the man who discovered universal gravitation did not believe his own law made sense, if he considered action at a distance an absurdity, then what did he actually think about his own achievement? We must examine what the author of this law understood that you do not. In the year 1687, the greatest work of natural philosophy ever composed was published in London. The Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica unified heaven and earth under a single mathematical law. The same force that pulls an apple from its branch, it demonstrated, holds the moon in its orbit, governs the tides, and binds the solar system together. This was triumph unprecedented. Terrestrial and celestial mechanics, previously thought fundamentally different, were revealed as manifestations of one universal principle. The motion of a falling stone and the sweep of Jupiter around the sun obeyed the same law. And 5 years later, the author of this triumph wrote to the theologian Richard Bentley and confessed that his own achievement demanded what reason could not accept. The words deserve exact quotation. That gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum, without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. Read those words again, slowly. The discoverer of universal gravitation declares that what his own law requires is an absurdity that no competent thinker could accept. This was not false modesty. This was not the great man simply being humble. This was genuine philosophical distress. Consider what all natural philosophy before this moment had assumed. When one body moves another, there must be contact. When a force is transmitted, there must be a medium to carry it. Sound travels through air. Waves propagate through water. When you push a stone, your hand touches the stone. Cause and effect require connection. This is not merely scientific doctrine. It is the foundation of rational thought itself. For if effects can occur without connected causes, if bodies can act where they are not present, then the entire edifice of reasoned inquiry collapses into magic. And yet the phenomena demanded exactly this impossibility. The French philosopher René Descartes had proposed an alternative. Perhaps space is not truly empty. Perhaps an invisible substance, call it ether, call it subtle matter, fills what appears to be void, and gravitational influence travels through this medium like waves through water. His vortices of swirling ether, he suggested, push the planets along their courses. The idea was elegant. It preserved mechanical explanation. It saved rational causation. And it was demolished by the mathematics. No arrangement of vortices, no pattern of ethereal pressure could reproduce the observed motions of the planets. The calculations were precise. The predictions failed. Whatever gravity might be, it was not transmitted through any medium that behaved according to known mechanical laws. Something reached across empty space and acted. The mathematics spoke clearly. But how? Here is where intellectual honesty becomes intellectual heroism. A lesser mind might have fabricated a mechanism, some clever hypothesis that explained the inexplicable, soothed the philosophical distress, and allowed the inquirer to proceed with comfortable certainty. Many did exactly this. They invented various schemes of particles, pressures, and hidden powers, all designed to make action at a distance seem comprehensible. But fabrication is not knowledge. Speculation is not science. The phrase that echoes through centuries was coined to refuse this temptation. Hypotheses non fingo. I frame no hypotheses. I feign no hypotheses. I invent no hypotheses. From the general scholium, I have not as yet been able to discover the cause of those properties of gravity from phenomena, and I frame no hypothesis, for whatever is not deduced from the phenomena is to be called a hypothesis, and hypotheses, whether metaphysical or physical, whether of occult qualities or mechanical, have no place in experimental philosophy. This was not intellectual surrender. This was the opposite. This was the refusal to pretend to know what could not be known, the discipline to distinguish between what phenomena demonstrate and what imagination supplies. The cause of gravity is what I do not pretend to know. Let us be precise about the magnitude of this confession. Here is a mind that has achieved the greatest unification in the history of human inquiry, brought terrestrial and celestial mechanics under one law, predicted the motions of worlds, explained phenomena from the fall of bodies to the paths of comets, and this same mind writes in evident distress that its own achievement demands what reason declares cannot be. The mathematics works, the predictions succeed, and the mechanism remains not merely unknown, but apparently impossible. If the discoverer himself found action at a distance absurd, you cannot dismiss the problem as mere philosophical nitpicking. The paradox is real. It was acknowledged by the greatest intellect to confront it. Gravity is not explained, it is merely described, and description, however precise, is not explanation. Perhaps you think that time and progress have resolved what troubled earlier ages, that centuries of inquiry have filled the gap, discovered the mechanism, explained what once seemed inexplicable. They have not. Later, theories introduced new vocabulary: fields, curved space, geometric deformation. Each offers a different description of gravitational phenomena. None offers a mechanical explanation of how influence crosses void. To speak of a gravitational field is to give a name to the puzzle, not to solve it. What is a field? How does it act? By what mechanism does it transmit influence? The questions merely relocate, they do not resolve. The honest inquirer acknowledges limits. The careless assumes they have been transcended because vocabulary has changed. The vocabulary has changed. The fundamental puzzle remains precisely as acute as when the law was first inscribed. How does one body act upon another through empty space? No answer satisfies the demand for mechanism. Perhaps the question admits no answer of that kind. And that raises a deeper question still. If the greatest achievement of natural philosophy rests on what its author considered absurd, what method could possibly yield reliable knowledge? How do we proceed when the universe refuses to make intuitive sense? The answer lies in that phrase we have already encountered. Hypotheses non fingo. It is time to understand what this refusal truly means. Hypotheses non fingo. You have heard this phrase. Perhaps you have assumed it meant intellectual surrender, the great mind confessing defeat, admitting he could not explain what he had discovered. You have it precisely backwards. This refusal was not defeat. It was revolution. It was the methodological breakthrough that made reliable, cumulative, natural philosophy possible. It was the discipline of distinguishing between what phenomena actually demonstrate and what imagination wishes to supply. Let us examine this carefully. When light passes through a prism and separates into colours, you observe the phenomenon directly. You measure the angles of refraction for each colour with precision. Red bends least, violet bends most. You can establish exact mathematical relationships governing these angles. Now, why do different colours refract at different angles? You encounter the same barrier that gravity presents. The phenomenon yields to mathematical law. The ultimate cause remains hidden. You know that each colour refracts at its characteristic angle. You do not know why. Does this make your knowledge worthless? Not at all. You can predict with perfect accuracy how light will behave. You can grind lenses that correct vision. You can build instruments that depend upon these laws of refraction. The phenomenon submits to mathematical description. You possess genuine, useful, reliable knowledge. What you do not possess is mechanical explanation, a visualizable picture of how refraction occurs, what forces act upon what substances to produce the bending. And here is the critical recognition. This is enough. It is enough that refraction operates according to the laws we have set forth. We can predict, we can apply, we can build. Whether we can picture the ultimate mechanism is a separate question, and perhaps the wrong question to demand. The distinction between theory and hypothesis is not pedantic. It is essential. A theory is deduced from phenomena. It is supported by experimental evidence. It makes predictions that can be tested and confirmed. It describes what is, based on what we can observe. A hypothesis is speculation that goes beyond the evidence. It may be clever. It may be appealing. It may satisfy our desire for picturable mechanism, but it is not knowledge. It is imagination, dressed in the costume of knowledge. Private notebooks may overflow with hypotheses. There is nothing wrong with speculation as a tool for guiding inquiry. But the moment speculation is presented as established truth, the moment hypothesis is confused with theory, the entire enterprise of knowledge corrupts. This is why the refusal to frame hypotheses is not weakness, but strength. It is the discipline that separates genuine natural philosophy from elaborate fiction. Consider the physician who observes that certain herbs reduce fever. He administers the remedy. The fever breaks. He repeats the treatment on other patients. The same result obtains. He can now predict this herb, administered in this manner, will reduce fever. Does he know how it works? He does not. What principle in the plant acts upon what principle in the body remains entirely obscure. He cannot visualize the mechanism. He cannot trace the chain of causation from leaf to bloodstream to restored health. Should he refuse to use the treatment until he understands its cause? Should he withhold effective remedy from suffering patients because he cannot explain why it is effective? Or should he proceed with what phenomena demonstrate, using what works whilst acknowledging the limits of his comprehension? The answer is plain. He treats, he heals. He remains honest about what he does and does not know. His knowledge is partial but genuine. It rests upon observation, not fancy. This is the physician who saves lives. The one who invents elaborate mechanical hypotheses about humours and vital spirits, who pretends to know what he does not know, is the one who bleeds his patients to death. We must understand why this restraint produces superior knowledge. The planets trace elliptical paths with the sun at one focus. The line connecting a planet to the sun sweeps equal areas in equal times. The square of the orbital period relates to the cube of the orbital distance. These are laws deduced from decades of painstaking observation, precise, predictive, unifying. Do they tell you why planets move thus? They do not. They tell you that planets move thus, and how to calculate their positions for centuries past and future. Now suppose a natural philosopher, dissatisfied with this descriptive knowledge, invents a mechanism. Suppose he proposes invisible particles streaming from the sun, pushing the planets along their courses, exerting pressure that accounts for the observed motions. What has he gained? If his mechanism reproduces the same predictions as the mathematical laws, he has gained nothing new, merely a picture to satisfy imagination, an hypothesis dressed as explanation. If his mechanism produces different predictions than the mathematical laws, and those predictions fail against observation, he has corrupted his inquiry with falsehood. Either way, the mechanism adds nothing to knowledge. It either duplicates what we already know or introduces error. The speculation was worse than useless. This is why hypotheses non fingo is methodological heroism, not surrender. It resists the temptation to pretend. It values what phenomena demonstrate over what imagination invents. But here is the deeper revolution, and it will transform how you understand all inquiry. Mathematical law is not a placeholder awaiting mechanical explanation. Mathematical law may be the deepest explanation reality provides. We habitually assume that mathematics describes underlying machinery, that the equations are representations of hidden pushes and pulls, and our task is to uncover the machinery beneath. But what if the relationship is reversed? What if mathematical structure is the fundamental level, and what we call mechanism is merely the portion of mathematical structure our intuitions happen to grasp? What if the inverse square law is not a summary of hidden forces, but simply what gravity is, at the most fundamental level reality admits? The demand for visualizable mechanism is a psychological demand, not an epistemic requirement. We want pictures we can see in our minds. Nature is under no obligation to satisfy this want. When you accept that mathematical law may be fundamental, that description may be all we get, and all we need, the burden lifts. The anxiety of not knowing dissolves. You cease demanding that the universe make intuitive sense and begin accepting it on its own terms. It is enough that gravity really exists and acts according to the laws we have set forth. It is enough. This is not the end of inquiry. It is the beginning of honest inquiry. You observe phenomena. You deduce mathematical laws. You test predictions. You refine your descriptions. This is the method that produces reliable, cumulative knowledge. Knowledge that endures. Knowledge that can be built upon. Knowledge that does not require rebuilding by each generation, because it was never founded on fancy. And when you reach the boundary, when phenomena demonstrate that something occurs, but not how it occurs, you stop. You do not pretend. You acknowledge the limit. You say, clearly and without shame, the cause remains hidden, but the effects are plain. This is intellectual courage. This is what makes knowledge worthy of the name. We now possess the method, observe phenomena, deduce mathematical laws, resist speculation beyond evidence. But what did this method reveal about gravity? What precisely does the inverse square law claim? And why does stating it precisely make the problem more acute rather than less? We must examine the law itself and the abyss it contains. You know the formula. You have seen it written. But have you truly grasped what it claims? Let us state it with precision, and let precision become revelation. Every particle of matter in the universe attracts every other particle of matter with a force that is proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Read that again. Every particle, every other particle, regardless of distance, at this moment, at this very instant, you are pulling upon the most distant stars visible in the night sky, and they are pulling upon you. The book in your hands exerts gravitational force upon the moon. The moon pulls back. Jupiter, that mighty body circling far beyond Mars, acts upon the pen upon your desk, and the pen upon Jupiter. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic license. This is what the law claims. Universal attraction. Every particle bound to every other particle in a web of mutual influence spanning the entire cosmos. Consider the specificity of the proportion. The force diminishes with the square of distance, not the distance itself, not the cube, not some other power. Squared, precisely squared, whence it follows, if you double your distance from an attracting body, the gravitational force upon you does not halve. It quarters. It reduces to 1/4. If you triple the distance, the force does not reduce to 1/3. It reduces to 1/9. At 10 times the distance, the force is not 1/10, but 1/100th. This specific relationship, squared, precisely squared, was not assumed. It was deduced. It was extracted from the observed periods and distances of planetary orbits, from the measured motions of the moon, from the fall of bodies on Earth's surface. The mathematics demanded this proportion. Nature demonstrated it. Why squared? What determines this particular power, rather than any other? The law does not say. It tells you that the relationship is inverse square. It does not tell you why. Now consider the moon. At this moment, as you read these words, the moon is falling toward the earth. Not metaphorically, not approximately, actually falling, accelerating earthward at every instant of its orbit. But it never arrives. It falls perpetually without landing. How? Because its forward motion, its tangential velocity, carries it around the curve of the earth as fast as it falls toward it. The surface of the earth curves away beneath the moon at precisely the rate the moon descends. The falling never ends. The landing never comes. This is what an orbit is: perpetual falling, endless descent around a curve. The moon is not suspended in the heavens by some celestial mechanism different from terrestrial gravity. The same force that drops a stone from a tower bends the moon from a straight path into its circular course. And what reaches across those 240,000 miles of emptiness to accomplish this bending? What acts upon that massive body and compels it to deviate from the straight line it would otherwise travel? The mathematics describes the curve with perfect precision. The mechanism remains absolutely dark. Watch the tides. Twice daily, the oceans of the earth rise and fall. The waters bulge toward the moon, heaped up on the side nearest that distant body, lifted by gravitational attraction across 250,000 miles. But there is another bulge on the far side of the earth, away from the moon. How does this occur? The moon cannot be pulling the far side waters toward itself. They are moving away from it. Here is the explanation. The solid earth is pulled moonward more strongly than the distant waters. The earth accelerates toward the moon. The far side oceans, less strongly attracted, are left behind. They bulge outward, not because they are pulled away, but because the earth beneath them is pulled more strongly toward. These complex phenomena, the two daily tides, their varying heights, their monthly modulations, all yield to mathematical analysis based on the inverse square law. The remote moon acting upon earthly oceans. The mathematics predicts what observation confirms. But what reaches across that distance? What medium carries the influence? None. The void between earth and moon is genuine void, emptiness through which force somehow acts. Meditate upon this. The moon lifts the oceans through nothing. Let us make the law's claim even sharper. Suppose you possess a very precise scale, sensitive enough to detect the smallest changes in weight. You stand upon this scale in a closed room. Somewhere outside, very far away, a massive body moves. According to the inverse square law, your weight changes at the very instant of that distant movement. Not eventually, not after time for something to travel. Immediately, instantaneously. The moment the distant mass moves, the force it exerts upon you adjusts. The law implies no propagation delay. Gravitational influence does not travel from here to there. It simply is, everywhere, adjusted simultaneously when any mass in the universe moves. The stars rearranging themselves touch you immediately. Distance offers no resistance to gravitational information. This is what the mathematics requires. This is what successful prediction demands you accept. Now understand why stating the law precisely makes the problem more acute rather than less. You might hope that clear mathematics would dissolve the philosophical puzzle. You might imagine that precision somehow domesticates the mystery, that once you can calculate, you have mastered the phenomenon. The opposite is true. Each element of the law contains its own scandal, universal reach, every particle acting on every other particle across any distance, no matter how vast. The inverse square proportion, precise, demonstrated, unexplained, instantaneous action, no delay, no propagation, no time for influence to travel. Action through void, no medium, no carrier, nothing bridging the emptiness. The more precisely you state what gravity does, the more impossible it becomes to explain how gravity does it. The formula is not a solution. It is the most precise statement of a problem. Calculation does not constitute comprehension. The mathematics works perfectly while revealing nothing about mechanism. We have now stated the law with care, but the full scandal remains to be articulated. If the law implies instantaneous action, if it requires force without medium, if it demands what reason declares impossible, then we must confront this impossibility directly. We must state the scandal fully and ask what it means. Let us now articulate what the inverse square law truly demands, not in the comfortable language of formula and calculation, but in the stark terms of philosophical implication. The scandal has 3 dimensions. Each is devastating. Together, they expose an abyss at the heart of our most fundamental physics. The first scandal: action through void. All attempts to fill the space between gravitating bodies with some medium have failed. The Cartesian vortices, that elegant hypothesis of subtle matter swirling through space, pushing planets along their courses, could not reproduce the observed motions. The mathematics was clear. No mechanical arrangement of invisible fluids pressing upon bodies could generate the inverse square law. The predictions failed. Other hypotheses fared no better. Streams of particles, pressure gradients, ethereal tensions, each ingenious construction collapsed when confronted with phenomena. The void is genuinely void. The emptiness between Earth and Sun contains nothing through which force might travel. And yet, force travels. Not something we haven't discovered yet. The structure of the inverse square law itself argues against any such medium. If gravitational influence were transmitted through a substance, that substance would have properties, density, resistance, behavior. Those properties would affect the transmission. The effects would appear in the mathematics. They do not appear. The mathematics is clean. The law requires action through genuine emptiness. The second scandal: instantaneous action. Suppose you could suddenly transport the Sun to twice its present distance from the Earth. According to the inverse square law, the gravitational force upon the Earth would immediately drop to 1/4 its present value. Not eventually. Not after light has time to traverse the new distance. Immediately. At the very instant of the Sun's displacement, every planet would feel the change simultaneously. Jupiter, Saturn, the distant comets, all would experience altered gravitational force at the same moment, regardless of their distance from the Sun. This is extraordinary upon reflection. It implies that gravitational information travels infinitely fast, or rather, that it does not travel at all. There is no propagation. The gravitational state of the universe is simply given everywhere at once, adjusted instantaneously when any mass moves. Nothing else behaves this way. Sound takes time to travel. Light takes time to travel. Every other influence we know of propagates through space, requiring time to move from cause to effect. Gravity does not propagate. It simply is. The mathematics requires this. The predictions confirm it. And reason recoils. The third scandal: universal entanglement. At this moment, you are gravitationally connected to every particle of matter in the observable universe. Not metaphorically, mathematically. The law admits no exception. Every body acts upon every other body. The force may be immeasurably small across cosmic distances, but it is not zero. It is real. It is calculable. You pull upon Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri pulls upon you. The most distant galaxies visible to the finest telescopes exert force upon this room, and this room upon them. The cosmos is not a collection of isolated bodies moving independently. It is a single interconnected system, each part bound to every other part by mutual gravitational attraction. This web of influence spans distances almost beyond conception, and every thread in this web acts instantaneously, through void, by no mechanism anyone has ever explained. Now understand why later developments have not resolved this scandal. They have merely re-described it. Some speak of a gravitational field, an invisible presence surrounding every mass, exerting influence upon other masses that enter it. But what is a field? How does it act? By what mechanism does this ethereal presence exert force upon material bodies? To invoke a field is to give a name to the mystery, not to solve it. The name becomes a comfortable word behind which the same unanswered questions hide. Others speak of curved space, masses bending the geometry of the universe, bodies following the curves thus created. But how does mass bend space? What is the mechanism of this bending? And how does curved geometry exert force upon material bodies? Again, redescription, not explanation. The vocabulary changes, the fundamental puzzle remains. Each new theory inherits the same burden, accounting for influence across void without medium or mechanism. Each satisfies the demand for description. None satisfies the demand for mechanical explanation. Perhaps no theory ever will. Perhaps the demand itself is misconceived. Consider what all this implies. The most fundamental force in nature, the force that holds you to the ground, that binds the moon to the earth, that assembles stars from scattered dust and sculpts galaxies across the heavens, operates by means that reason declares impossible. The greatest natural philosopher who confronted this force called it so great an absurdity that no competent thinker could accept it. He was right, and yet the apple falls, the moon orbits, the cosmos coheres, the law works, the predictions succeed, the mechanism hides. Let us make this vivid one final time. Stand up if you are seated. Feel your weight. That pressure you feel, feet against floor, body against chair, is gravity acting upon you. Now understand what that sensation actually represents. The earth beneath you, every particle of it, from the stones beneath your feet to the molten core miles below, reaches through the floor, through your shoes, through your body, and pulls upon every particle of your being, not through contact in any usual sense, not through any medium or mechanism, through influence that crosses void. You are embraced by a force that should not, by all mechanistic reasoning, exist. You experience the impossible every moment of your life, so constantly that you would cease to notice. The scandal is not abstract, it is enacted in your own body. It presses upon you now. We have stated the scandal fully. The law describes, the mechanism hides. Mathematical success combines with philosophical impossibility. This is the situation. We cannot escape it by pretending the problem has been solved. We cannot dissolve it by changing vocabulary. We must confront it. And confrontation raises the deepest question yet. What does it mean that the foundational force of our universe operates in a manner reason declares impossible? If we cannot explain gravity mechanically, what kind of truth is gravitational law? And what does this teach us about the nature of all human knowledge? We must move from physics to philosophy, from what is gravity to what can we know? You have now confronted the scandal fully. The foundational force of the cosmos operates through void, instantaneously, by no mechanism anyone has explained. Mathematical precision describes the impossible. Calculation succeeds where comprehension fails. And perhaps you feel burdened by this. Perhaps you experience the limits of explanation as a kind of defeat, as though nature has withheld something she ought to have revealed, as though understanding has failed where it should have succeeded. If so, you carry an unnecessary weight, and it is time to set it down. The demand that all knowledge take the form of mechanical explanation is not a truth. It is a prejudice, one so pervasive, so deeply embedded in how we think about understanding that we mistake it for necessity. Where did this prejudice arise? From success. The mechanical philosophy triumphed in so many domains, explaining the operation of pumps and levers, the behavior of fluids, the transmission of motion through contact, that we assumed its methods must apply everywhere. If mechanism explained so much, surely mechanism must explain everything. But this is precisely backwards. The success of mechanical explanation in some domains does not establish its applicability to all domains. That universality was assumed, not demonstrated. And gravity demonstrates its falsity. Here is a phenomenon that resists mechanical explanation completely. No arrangement of pushes and pulls, no configuration of visible or invisible machinery reproduces what we observe. The mathematics demands action without contact. The phenomena confirm it. Either gravity is miraculous, a brute violation of reason, or our demand for mechanical explanation was misconceived from the start. The second option is correct. The demand was prejudice. Nature owes us no picture we can visualize. She owes us only phenomena we can observe and laws we can deduce. Let us be precise about what kind of knowledge we actually possess. We must distinguish between descriptive truth and explanatory truth. These are different things, routinely conflated. Descriptive truth tells you what happens. The inverse square law describes gravitational phenomena with perfect accuracy. Bodies attract. The force is proportional to mass and inversely proportional to distance squared. This description is true. It has been verified countless times. It makes predictions that observation confirms. Explanatory truth tells you why something happens, what underlying mechanism produces the observed effect, what chain of causation connects initial condition to final outcome. Now here is the critical recognition. Descriptive truth can be complete, while explanatory truth remains absent. You can know what happens without knowing why. You can describe with perfect precision without understanding mechanism. And this is genuine knowledge. It is not inferior knowledge waiting to be completed by explanation. It is simply a different kind of knowledge, the kind that nature actually provides. Consider the master clockmaker. He understands his creation perfectly. He knows how the gears mesh, how the escapement regulates the pendulum, how each component connects to each other component. The mechanism is open to his inspection. He can explain why the clock keeps time in terms of how the parts interact. But he did not create the brass from which his gears are cut. He does not know why brass possesses the properties it has. Rigidity sufficient to hold its form, malleability sufficient to be shaped, durability sufficient to function across years of use. What gives matter these properties? What underlying principle determines that this particular metal behaves thus? He cannot say. His mechanical knowledge rests upon a foundation he does not comprehend. Does this shame him? Does it render his craftsmanship fraudulent? Not at all. His knowledge is real within its domain. It enables him to build timepieces of extraordinary precision. That it rests upon mystery does not diminish it. All knowledge rests upon mystery. The clockmaker is simply honest about where his mystery lies. Now apply this recognition to gravity. We possess descriptive truth of exceptional precision. The inverse square law works. The predictions succeed. We can calculate the motions of planets for millennia, predict eclipses to the second, chart the courses of comets across vast stretches of time and space. We lack explanatory truth. We cannot say how gravity acts, by what mechanism influence crosses void, through what medium or manner force is transmitted where there is nothing to transmit it. But here is what transforms this situation from defeat to liberation. Perhaps explanatory truth, in the mechanical sense, is not available for gravity. Perhaps the demand for such explanation is itself the error. What if mathematical law is not a summary of hidden machinery, but the fundamental level? What if the inverse square relation is not a description of something deeper, but simply what gravity is? We habitually assume that mathematics describes underlying physical processes, that the equations represent machinery, and our task is to uncover the gears beneath the formulas. But what if the relationship is reversed? What if mathematical structure is the deepest reality, and what we call mechanism is merely the portion of that structure our evolved intuitions happen to grasp? This is not mysticism, it is a philosophical possibility that gravity forces us to consider. The demand for visualizable mechanism may be a psychological preference rooted in our terrestrial experience of pushing and pulling, not a requirement that nature is obligated to satisfy. Consider the infinite regress that any mechanical explanation faces. Suppose someone tomorrow announced a mechanism for gravity, some arrangement of particles, some subtle medium, some hidden machinery that transmits gravitational influence in a way that satisfies our demand for visualizable causation. What would you immediately ask? Why does this mechanism operate as it does? And if they answered that question with another mechanism, you would ask again, why does that mechanism operate thus? The chain of why extends infinitely backward. At some point, every explanation reaches brute fact, a law that simply is, without further explanation, available. At some point, you must accept a foundation that is described but not itself explained. Gravity merely places this stopping point earlier than you expected. The inverse square law is that brute fact. It describes what is. It does not explain why. But the structure of knowledge is identical whether you reach brute fact at the first level or the 10th. Eventually, description is all you have. Eventually, why receives no answer, except because that is how nature operates. The scandal of gravity is not that it lacks mechanical explanation. The scandal, if scandal it be, is that all knowledge terminates in the unexplained. Gravity simply makes this visible. And here is the liberation. Once you recognize that descriptive truth is genuine truth, that mathematical law is genuine knowledge, the anxiety of not knowing dissolves. You do not need to explain how gravity acts in order to use its laws. You do not need visualizable mechanism to have real understanding. The universe operates as it operates, and your task is to discover the mathematical laws of that operation, not to force those laws into conformity with your imaginative preferences. The burden of demanding mechanism for everything lifts. Mystery becomes acceptable, not failure, but feature. You can pursue knowledge vigorously whilst acknowledging limits gracefully. This is not intellectual surrender, it is intellectual maturity. Be rigorous about what phenomena demonstrate. Be honest about what they do not. Value what you have: precise description, accurate prediction, mathematical law, and cease lamenting what nature has not provided. It is enough that gravity really exists and acts according to the laws we have set forth. It is enough. But this understanding does not diminish wonder. It amplifies wonder. For if we step back and examine what the mathematical laws actually reveal, if we consider the pattern they disclose rather than the mechanism they hide, we discover something extraordinary. We discover elegance. We discover unity. We discover a cosmos that operates according to principles of stunning simplicity and beauty. And that demands attention. That one law should govern both apple and moon. Pause upon this. Let it penetrate. Before the unification of terrestrial and celestial mechanics, These were thought to be fundamentally different domains. What happened on Earth was one thing, subject to corruption, decay, change. What happened in the heavens was another, perfect, eternal, governed by different principles entirely. This division seemed natural. The heavens are remote, unchanging to casual observation, moving in perfect circles across the sky. The earth is near, mutable, full of straight lines and sudden stops. Surely different laws govern such different realms. And then came demonstration that the same force pulling an apple from its branch holds the moon in its orbit. The same mathematics, the same inverse square proportion, the same gravitational constant. What drops the stone and what guides the planets are one and the same. This is not merely a scientific finding, it is a revelation about the structure of reality. Consider the arrangement of the solar system. The planets trace elliptical paths with the sun at one focus, not circles, as ancient astronomy supposed, but ellipses of precise mathematical form. Each planet maintains its orbit with unwavering regularity, never deviating from the curve inscribed by gravitational law. The line connecting any planet to the sun sweeps equal areas in equal times. Move closer to the sun, and you move faster. Move farther, and you slow. The relationship is exact, mathematical, unvarying. The square of each planet's orbital period relates to the cube of its average distance from the sun. This proportion holds for Mercury and for Saturn, for every body bound to our star. Why these relationships? Why ellipses rather than circles? Why equal areas in equal times? Why the three halves power relating period to distance? Because of the inverse square law. These elegant patterns are mathematical consequences of gravitational attraction diminishing with the square of distance. The geometry of planetary motion is written by the arithmetic of force. One law, many consequences, endless complexity emerging from stunning simplicity. Is it not remarkable that such simplicity underlies such complexity? The inverse square law can be stated in a single sentence. It involves only mass and distance, the most elementary properties of matter. And from this single principle flows the behavior of every gravitating body in the cosmos, from dust motes to galaxies, from falling raindrops to orbiting worlds. This is not what we would expect if the universe were arbitrary. If nature were random, we would expect different phenomena to obey different laws. Complexity to require complexity in explanation. The behavior of planets to have no connection to the behavior of apples. Instead, we find unity. We find one law governing all. We find simplicity at the foundation, complexity only in the combinations. This uniformity cannot be accident. It demands explanation. Or if explanation is unavailable, at least recognition, at least wonder. Consider what it means that we can comprehend these laws at all. The universe is under no obligation to be intelligible. There is no necessity that finite minds evolved on a small planet should be capable of grasping the mathematics that governs celestial mechanics. And yet, we do grasp it. The same capacity for reason that lets us calculate the trajectory of a thrown stone lets us predict the positions of planets millennia hence. The mathematics is not different in kind. Human minds, these fragile, limited organs, can comprehend the laws that bind the cosmos. This is remarkable. This is not obvious. This should fill us with awe. That the universe is lawful at all is extraordinary. That its laws are mathematically elegant is more extraordinary still. That creatures like ourselves can discover and apply these laws is almost beyond belief. Look upon the heavens tonight, if skies permit. Each of those points of light is a sun, many larger than our own, some surrounded by planets we cannot see. Each is bound in gravitational relationship to its neighbours. Each moves according to the same inverse square law that governs the fall of your pen. The mathematics that predicts where Jupiter will be 1,000 years from now is the mathematics of ordinary proportion, the same reasoning that lets a merchant calculate his profits or an architect plan his arches. There is nothing exotic in the calculation. The exotic part is that calculation works, that the heavens submit to the same mathematics we use for everyday purposes. This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from something extraordinary. Whether we call it divine intelligence, mathematical Platonism, or simply the way things are, the elegance is undeniable. The unity is real. Wonder is the appropriate response. We have travelled far. We began in false certainty, believing we understood gravity because we could calculate it. We passed through productive disorientation, recognizing that description is not explanation, that the formula conceals an abyss. We examined the scandal, action through void, instantaneous influence, universal entanglement. We have emerged into a new understanding. Mathematical law is genuine knowledge, even when mechanism hides. Limits are features, not failures. The universe is not obligated to make intuitive sense, and in accepting these limits, we have discovered something more precious than mechanism. We have discovered elegance. We have seen that one law binds apple and moon, stone and star. We have recognized that the cosmos is mathematically beautiful and miraculously comprehensible to minds like ours. But understanding must become perception. Philosophy must transform into experience. How does this wisdom change the way you see a falling stone, an orbiting planet, the force that holds you to the earth? We must now translate intellectual recognition into transformed perception. Everything you have learned means nothing if it remains mere information. Facts stored in memory, propositions assented to, arguments followed and forgotten. Understanding must become seeing. Philosophy must transform into perception. After this chapter, you will never watch something fall the same way again. Drop something, anything, a pen, a book, a stone if you have one. Drop it and watch it fall. You have seen this phenomenon countless times. Objects fall. The world is full of falling, rain descending, leaves spiraling, drop things accelerating earthward. You have witnessed falling since your eyes first opened. It is the most ordinary thing. Now see it. Between the falling object and the earth lies nothing. Trace the path. There is air, yes, but air does not pull the object down. Air resists. If anything, air slows the descent. What accelerates the object earthward is not the air. Below the air is floor or ground or earth. But these are not touching the falling object. There is gap. There is void. There is separation. And yet, across that separation, through that void, the earth reaches and pulls. Not through any string, not through any chain, not through any visible or invisible medium that anyone has ever identified. The earth simply acts upon the falling object from a distance. You are watching action at a distance. You are witnessing the impossible made ordinary through repetition. The falling object does not know this. It does not understand the scandal of its own descent. But you now know. You now see not merely falling, but mystery enacted, the philosophically inexplicable, made continuous, constant, everywhere. Now consider your own weight. Stand up, if you are able. Feel the pressure of floor against feet, the resistance of ground beneath you. That sensation is gravity acting upon your body. But what is that action? The earth beneath you, every particle of it, from the stones beneath the surface to the molten core thousands of miles below. reaches through floor and shoe and bone and pulls upon every particle of your being, not through contact in any ordinary sense, not through any mechanism that satisfies the demand for visualizable causation, through influence that crosses void. You are embraced by a force that should not, by mechanistic reasoning, exist. At every moment of your waking life, you feel this embrace. The constant pressure of weight is the constant action of gravitational influence, instantaneous, universal, operating through nothing. You experience the impossible continuously. You are so accustomed to it that you had ceased to notice it. Notice it now. Tonight, if weather permits, look at the moon. You have seen it 1,000 times. It is familiar, ordinary, a bright disk crossing the sky, waxing and waning through its phases, rising and setting in eternal rhythm. Now see it. That body, 240,000 miles distant, massive beyond easy imagination, is falling toward the earth at this very moment, falling perpetually, endlessly, curving from the straight path it would otherwise travel. It falls, but never lands. Its forward motion carries it around the curve of the earth as fast as it falls toward it. The orbit is constant, falling without a rival. What bends the moon from its straight path? What reaches across 250,000 miles of emptiness and compels that massive body to curve? Something acts. The mathematics describes it. The mechanism hides. You are watching, have always been watching, whenever you glanced at the moon. The impossible enacted nightly. The scandal is visible every cloudless evening, written in the sky for all who have eyes to see. See it now. Let us practice this perception. Pour water from a vessel. Watch the stream curve earthward, arcing as it falls. What pulls it? Nothing visible, nothing tangible, nothing connecting the water to the earth, except influence that traverses void. Throw a ball. Watch it rise, slow, stop, and then accelerate downward. At the highest point of its arc, what reverses its direction? What invisible hand pushes it back toward ground? No hand, no push, only attraction, action at a distance, operating through emptiness. Watch rain fall. Each drop accelerates earthward, pulled from sky to ground by force that acts where there is nothing. Watch a leaf spiral down. The same force guides it, the same impossibility, the same action through void. Accumulate these observations. Let them multiply until the sheer pervasiveness of gravitational action becomes vivid, inescapable. You swim in mystery. Every falling body, every orbiting moon, every tide and trajectory testifies to it. This is not mysticism. This is accurate perception. The error most make is treating the commonplace as comprehended. Because we see falling constantly, we assume we understand it. Because gravity is ordinary, we believe it is explained. But ordinary is not the same as understood. Common is not the same as comprehended. What is actually there when you watch something fall is constant gravitational action through unexplained means. This is not poetry. This is physics. The mathematical law describes action at a distance. The phenomena confirm it. The mechanism remains absolutely dark. To see this truly is not mystical indulgence. It is honesty. It is refusing to let familiarity masquerade as understanding. The world really is as strange as this chapter claims. You simply had not noticed. But there is another error to avoid. Letting the insight fade. Perception transforms, but habit erodes transformation. Tomorrow you will watch things fall, and the old automaticity will reassert itself. The strangeness will dull. The mystery will fade into background. This is natural. It is also wasteful. Maintain the perception. Return to it. When you feel your weight, remember what that sensation represents. When you see the moon, recall that it is falling perpetually through void. When you watch rain descend, recognize the impossibility enacted in each drop. The practice is simple. Notice gravity. Notice it not as formula, but as phenomenon. See not merely that things fall, but how strange it is that they fall thus, acted upon from a distance, through nothing, by means no mechanism has ever explained. This is not mere philosophical exercise. This is learning to see the world as it actually is, not as familiarity has taught you to dismiss it, but as careful inquiry reveals it to be. Strange, elegant, unified by mathematical law, inexplicable in ultimate mechanism. This is the truth. See it. We approach the end. You have travelled from comfortable certainty through productive disorientation to transformed understanding. You have learned to distinguish calculation from comprehension. You have confronted the scandal of action at a distance. You have recognized that descriptive truth is genuine truth, that mathematical law is genuine knowledge, that limits are features rather than failures. And you have begun to see, truly see, the mystery enacted in every falling body. One task remains. We must articulate the ultimate implications. We must state what endures when this documentary ends. We must leave you with wisdom that lasts. The ocean of truth awaits. Near the end of a long life devoted to inquiry, these words were reportedly spoken. I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself in now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. Pause upon this image. A boy on a shore, pebbles and shells, an infinite ocean. The pebbles are genuine treasures. They are smooth, beautiful, precious finds. The boy delights in them rightly. His discoveries are real, but the ocean stretches beyond sight, beyond imagination. Its depths are unmeasured. Its extent is unknown. Against this vastness, the pebbles are finite, partial, fragments of something too large to grasp. This is our relationship to truth. The inverse square law is a pebble. It is beautiful, mathematically elegant, precisely predictive, unifying heaven and earth. It is precious, enabling calculation of planetary motions for millennia, prediction of tides and eclipses, understanding of cosmic structure, and it sits upon a shore bounded by an ocean of what we do not know, and perhaps cannot know. How does gravity act? By what mechanism does influence cross void? Why the inverse square rather than some other proportion? These questions lap at our feet like waves, withdrawing no matter how far we wade. What then is the wisdom that endures? First, the distinction between calculation and comprehension is permanent equipment for navigating all inquiry. Carry this discrimination everywhere. When confident claims of understanding arise, ask: calculation or comprehension, prediction or explanation, description or mechanism? You will find the distinction applies far beyond gravity. In medicine, we can predict that certain treatments work without knowing why. In commerce, we can calculate market behavior without comprehending the causes. In human affairs, we can anticipate patterns without understanding the hearts that generate them. Everywhere, descriptive truth outruns explanatory truth. Everywhere, we know what happens more fully than we know why. This is not cause for despair, it is cause for honesty. The honest navigator of knowledge recognizes what they possess and what they lack. They value prediction without confusing it with understanding. They use laws without pretending those laws are explanations. Second, intellectual humility is strength, not weakness. The greatest achievement in the history of natural philosophy, the unification of terrestrial and celestial mechanics, was accompanied by frank confession of ignorance about mechanism. The cause of gravity is what I do not pretend to know. This was not failure of intellect, it was triumph of integrity. Resisting the temptation to invent pleasing explanations requires courage. It is easier to fabricate, to speculate, to dress hypothesis in the costume of knowledge. It takes discipline to stop at what phenomena demonstrate, to say, this is what I know, and this is where my knowledge ends. Adopt this discipline. When you do not know, say so. When you have described but not explained, acknowledge it. When the limit of your understanding arrives, do not paper over it with confident fiction. This honesty will make your genuine knowledge more valuable, not less. What you actually know will be reliable. What you admit you do not know will be clearly marked. You will navigate more wisely than those who confuse their speculations for certainties. Third, wonder is the appropriate response to what we have discovered. The cosmos operates according to precise, beautiful, discoverable laws. One principle unifies apple and moon. Mathematical elegance underlies apparent complexity, and, remarkably, minds like ours can grasp these laws. This should fill us with awe, not the awe of ignorance, not the wonder of those who do not understand and simply stare in confusion. The wonder of those who do understand, as far as understanding goes, and recognize how extraordinary it is that understanding is possible at all, that the universe is lawful, that its laws are simple, that those laws are comprehensible to finite minds evolved on a small planet orbiting an ordinary star. None of this was necessary. All of it is remarkable. Wonder is not the enemy of inquiry. It is inquiry's proper companion, the emotional recognition that accompanies genuine insight. To lose wonder is to lose the motive for investigation. To cultivate wonder is to remain perpetually alive to the strangeness and beauty of what is. Fourth, the mystery of gravity is not a problem to be solved, but a feature of reality to be accepted. You might hope that someday, somehow, someone will discover the mechanism, will reveal how influence crosses void, will explain what explanations now lack. Perhaps the future is not ours to know, but consider every explanation of gravity offered since the law was first inscribed has merely re-described rather than resolved. Fields, curved space, gravitational waves, each introduces new vocabulary, new mathematical apparatus, new descriptions of the same phenomena. None provides the visualizable mechanism that our intuitions demand. Perhaps that mechanism does not exist. Perhaps the inverse square law is the bottom level, not a summary of something deeper, but the fundamental fact itself. Perhaps mathematical structure is more basic than physical machinery, and our demand for mechanism reflects the limitations of intuition rather than the structure of reality. If so, there is nothing to solve. There is only recognition to achieve, acceptance of how nature actually operates, whether or not it satisfies our cognitive preferences. Live with the mystery. Let it humble you without defeating you. Pursue inquiry vigorously within its limits. And when you reach those limits, rest there in appropriate wonder rather than frustration. And now, the end. You thought you understood gravity. You learned a formula. You calculated trajectories. You believed the matter was settled. Now you understand what understanding means and what it cannot mean. The law predicts, the mechanism hides, This is not failure. This is the structure of knowledge. You have traced the scandal to its roots. Action at a distance, through void, instantaneous and universal. You have seen the greatest mind to confront this scandal, confess it an absurdity while refusing to fabricate false resolution. You have learned the method of honest inquiry, observe phenomena, deduce mathematical laws, resist speculation beyond evidence. Hypotheses non fingo. I frame no hypotheses. The discipline that feels like surrender is actually the foundation of reliable knowledge. You have recognized that descriptive truth is genuine truth, that mathematical law is real knowledge even when mechanism remains dark. The demand for visualizable causation is psychological preference, not epistemic requirement. And you have begun to see the world with new eyes. Every falling body enacts the mystery. Every orbit testifies to the impossible. The ordinary has become extraordinary. The familiar has become strange. The commonplace has revealed its depths. The apple still falls. The moon still orbits. The cosmos still coheres. The mathematics works. The predictions succeed. And behind all of it lies mystery that no instrument will penetrate, no hypothesis will dispel. Be humble about what you know. Be rigorous about what you claim to comprehend. Hold your mechanisms lightly and your mathematics firmly. And remember always, to calculate is not to comprehend. It is enough that gravity really exists and acts according to the laws we have set forth, and abundantly serves to account for all the motions of the celestial bodies and of our sea. It is enough. The great ocean of truth lies all undiscovered before us. What we hold are pebbles, beautiful, precise, precious pebbles. Let us value them for what they are, neither more nor less, and let us stand in appropriate wonder at the vast waters we shall never sound.